Our program tonight is The History of the Brender House by Nolan Jones. The Brender House at 545 West 20th Street in Eudora is one of the most historic and architecturally significant houses in northeastern Kansas. The house, which I believe is around 150 years old, has been lovingly cared for and preserved by Robert Wilson and his family, Robert Wilson is here tonight, and later on the Jones family since 2017. In 2019, the Joneses successfully listed the Brender House on the State and National Register of Historic Places, which is an impressive accomplishment. Nolan and Stephanie Jones moved to Eudora in 2017. Both wasted no time in making themselves a big part of our community. They are active in a number of organizations, particularly the Giving Garden. A lot of us here know Stephanie pretty well because she was on our board for 5 years, and we're very fortunate with how active she was with our organization during those years. And of course, she was really the first strong advocate for the preservation of Eudora's historic Southwest Cemetery, which we're now making progress on. So I thank her and her advocacy for getting the ball rolling on that, which is what eventually led to KU students really getting involved with it. Finally, I have to express how grateful I am for a number of items. I'm grateful for all the work that Robert Wilson and his family did on the restoration of the Brender House. I'm grateful for everything the Joneses did with the restoration of the Brender House. I'm grateful that they both care about the history of the house, and I'm very grateful that they're both here for this program tonight. So please welcome Nolan Jones.
Thank you. My wife Stephanie would normally be the one doing this, but she's in Denver at the moment visiting family. But she is watching and texts me, make sure I stay in line. I'm pretty excited, and hopefully no embarrassment over it, but one of the Brender relatives is also online, which I'm very excited, and hopefully can make some connections, which is amazing through there. So my name is Nolan Jones. As has been mentioned, my wife Stephanie and I have been here since 2017, and fell in love with this house while we were living in Louisiana, and pretty much decided on it before we even came up here. So something called to us on that thing. I'm very happy it worked that way. I'll be going through some slides and some befores and afters and some stuff. I'll be calling on Robert Wilson. As you'll see in there, that house, strong bones, but like anything else that's over 100 years old, needs a little help through there. And I want to I'll also be talking about some of the work that's going on right now and what's involved with that, and maybe some ideas for you all as well. So with no further ado, let's jump right in there. So there's the house on a beautiful day. Introductions, as I mentioned, Stephanie and myself are the proud owners or caretakers, because that house is going to be there long after we're gone, and we want to make sure it's there so that somebody's doing this presentation 100 years from now can reference us as well. One of the things that I love about the house is, and I'll talk more about it, it's not an antique you set up on a shelf. It's a living house. It is something we actively, with 5 dogs and all that, it is a part of our lives, and we're rough with it as that, but we want to make sure it's preserved. And then most importantly, what's up with the skeleton horse in the front? Quick story on that. Shortly after we moved in, doing Halloween, and a buddy of mine that lives in Utah takes Halloween way too seriously, told me about this deal on the skeleton horse, and I thought, well, sure, that's going to look great. I'll put it up there. We have the wagon, and Halloween's over and about to take it down, and my Stephanie says, no, I've always wanted a horse. That's our horse. So we decorated, as many of you know, for all the seasons and a few things. So the horse will remain there indefinitely. Okay, so a little bit about the history. And there's a few gaps in there that I won't go over because, honestly, I don't have that much information. But there's only been a few owners of this home through there. John Brender, namesake of the home, and you know, obviously when you're going through the historical preservation, you do the original owner through there. So we'll talk about that. But equally important is the Rosenau family. That that house was in that family for a long time, and a lot of credit goes to them as well. In many ways, it could be many do call it the Rosenau home because of the time period of that, and definitely respect that. Robert Wilson, who's here. Robert is a pivot point on the house. That house could have gone one way or the other, and Robert made sure it went the right way. And then, right now, the owners, Stephanie and Nolan, I like my kneecaps, so we will never be moving, because my wife would make sure if I try to get us to move, those will get broken. So we will do that, but we want to obviously make sure that it is continued down the road. That house needs to be here forever. John Brender. As things they get a little sketchy back in the day. There's some reports that he was part of the original group that came out to settle, with full understanding there were folks here before the settlers, but with that, others shortly thereafter. And I personally, kind of looking through that, think he came over just after that first settlement. But he was the first blacksmith. I think that's generally accepted through there. Nancy, the second wife, through there, thankfully a picture of that Ben was able to find on there, as in some of the children as well, through there. I won't even begin to try to pronounce some of these names through there. And Ben, can we, the presentation, is that made available, or the slides or something? So sure. Folks that want to have this, we can make sure you get it.
Sure.
Lots of family, but basically, as folks did back in those days, lots of kids go through there, and do that. And here's a great article we found in the Historical Society, or an advertisement about John L. Brender as a dealer of harvester equipment. And of course, back in the day, you didn't get to just pick one thing you did. As blacksmith, you also sell, do, life changes, you adapt as you need to. I thought this was a great statement in the Lawrence Weekly World. Mr. White moved to Overbrook some 3 months ago, but came to the conclusion that Eudora was a better place for humanity. It can be now found in the employ of John L. Brender's hardware store. I agree, and Stephanie does too, that it is. Eudora is a better place for humanity, so we like it. Rosenau's. Otto, born in 1906 and then passed. And Robert, you got to meet
I met him a couple months before he passed.
Okay, and so definitely a part of there. And Pearl Gabriel, his wife, and then they were married in 1925. Gustav there in 1836, and all the family that went through there, and obviously they had it for so many years. As with anything, some of you may have more information through there, so afterwards, if you wouldn't mind, we're always trying to learn more about those years and what's through there. And we'll talk a little bit about the apple orchard. I think that's one of the things that a lot of folks have memories of. And then Robert Wilson, who we'll be talking more through there. Okay, a little bit about the home. As I learned getting on the historical registry, learned a little bit of architecture, and dealing with the folks at the State Historical Society was amazing. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but they are there to help, both on the research and understanding of the home. Obviously, it's a very unique looking home with its own challenges. I don't recommend flat roofs. They're not the most fun to deal with, but a great home. And obviously, one of the most famous mansard designs, and the one I kind of referenced, if somebody's trying to find the house, well, look for the kind of the spooky Addams Family looking home, and bingo, they know right what to look for. Stephanie didn't like that, but it's definitely noticeable. And you can see here kind of one of the older photos of it. I'll have some others there, but you can definitely see kind of that core look to it that hasn't really changed. It's been adjustments, and Robert's enhanced it quite a bit, staying in character with the home. You can see some of the things like here, this cover over the front, redoing the chimney, some of those looks, but the core is right there. Okay, so now kind of getting into the key life cycle of the home. very solid house. Those walls are about 3 feet thick. It's limestone, kind of rubble between it, limestone. So house wasn't going into the core. But everything in there, after all those years, and they didn't have pressure treated lumber back in the day or those sorts of things. So things get a little rough, and that's pretty much kind of where Robert comes into play. And Robert, chime in as you kind of get in there, because this is where I think was the most important time of the house outside of the building of it, is this pivot point of what are you gonna do? Is it gonna get bulldozed or is it gonna get saved? And not too many people would have went in there, and how many years did you live there with no running water?
2 years.
2 years with no running water, living there, remodeling this. That's a commitment to saving this place.
I would never do that again.
No, that's a young man sort of deal there. And now you can see that, there'll be some of these examples, but from that to this. Now, that was torn out and then rebuilt. That's, one of the core areas that was rebuilt, that sunroom, and made it enclosure through there. But when you're talking remodeling, it doesn't get any much more severe than the floor's right there. He's underground. There's Robert with a crowbar. But that's the floor. Literally took out the floors on the first floor just so to get better support in there. And that's the level that you will see in the whole house that was remodeled down to that.
No,
to
would
save
you
it.
like me to get up there and
Yes.
do flip out to a little bit further?
I would love that.
Okay. Well, the
That's-
backstory is, I've been in construction, I have a business degree, but couldn't get a job in 1980, so I met this custom builder. He taught me how to build, and I built 6 spec houses in Shawnee when I was 22 to 25. Moved away when the hurricane hit down in Florida. I worked down there for a couple years building, but I eventually came back to Lawrence because my grandparents and my family lived here. I was looking for a house, a project, not quite like this, but it just kind of appeared. And at the time, as you were saying, it was a pivot point. Everybody wanted to buy that house and the 10 acres, and they were going to tear that down. No banker would loan money on something like this because it was really too far gone. Ott did live in the living room a couple months before he went to the, I don't know which hospital, or retirement home, but he lived in the living room as long as he could. Let's go back to the picture.
Yeah, let me go back to that.
So the fireplace here, I'm opening it up because the walls are 24 inches thick, above ground, hand chiseled limestone. There's 2 chunks and then rubble in the middle, like you were talking about. Below is 36 inches across. And then when you go to the basement, you see this bump out, this huge weight, and I'm thinking, there's something going on there. And so I chiseled, this was stuccoed over, and I chiseled this out, and you can see the arch. So that was the fireplace that they boarded up, I don't know, 20s, 30s, I don't know when it was. Probably because it was losing heat. All the house, every room was heated with a pot belly stove, and they used the chimney part for that. I look a lot younger there too. But the floor joists were pocketed into the stone, and this is in Europe. They do that in castles. They didn't have termite treatments for the floor joists, so they would slide them in. They would just have pockets on either end. They'd slide them in, and then when the termites ate it, they would slide out and put a new one in. And so that's basically what I did here. The floors were in really bad shape. In order to take out the floors, I took out the electrical, the plumbing, the gas, everything. And I was poor then, and I basically camped for 2 years while I worked from my room. This is a picture of my brother-in-law who taught me how to build. He was 20 years older than me, and he knew it all. I mean, he had to do it all. So he had to do the electrical and plumbing, and then he taught me that. So I personally did the gas line, personally did the electrical, and it was a very cool experience. And then here you can see, I think this was,
After you had the floor.
I think I had the floor, and so then you put it back in, and then you leveled it up, and then I put 3/4 inch oak on that.
And we'll have some more pictures of the remodeling. I've just started there at the front. And the dogs. I gotta show the dogs. This is the upstairs.
Yeah, so this was the continuation of the chimney down below, and every room had some sort of place for the potbelly stove, and there it was. And there would have been a stove here. Again, this was all boarded up, and I chiseled that out. It's not functional, but it's a visual thing.
That's looking into the master bedroom, and here, let me show you there. So before and after on the extent of the work there.
So the lower level, which was not level, I was able to level. The upstairs, I was not able to remove the floor joists. So you may see a picture where I created a wedge. So I leveled by cutting a 2x4 from nothing to 3 inches. And I leveled the entire sloping floor by wedges, and then I put 3/4 inch plywood down and then carpet. It had 4 bedrooms, and you had to go through a bedroom to get to a bedroom, which is not too conducive to today's lifestyle. So I took one of the bedrooms and turned it into a master suite where I put a fireplace and a jacuzzi. I don't know if you still have that. That was very popular 20 years ago. Not anymore. Also had a phone jack by the jacuzzi.
Oh yeah, no, that's still there, yeah.
So the house we feel was built, there's no permits. The earliest date was 1876. And the cast iron pieces in the houses would have the dates on them. And the earliest one was dated, and that was the front door handle. We still have that. I think you have one piece, I have the other.
Yeah.
Something like that. So they were built prior to bathrooms. And in 1913, they added the bathroom, and this is the clawfoot tub that's in the center part of the tower.
And I'll show an after here.
And so there's the same tub that I restored and had, I got these on eBay. And then I had them re-nickeled. And then I twisted it so you could, it's pretty cool. But in order to,
Back to there, yeah.
yeah, in order to, so here's the bathroom now, and that's where the tub would be. In order to get to the tower, which I think is the coolest part, which I used as my office for about 14 years, I had to build a room off the back, cut a hole in the ceiling, and then get a spiral in there. And the smallest spiral they make is 24 inches. And I spiraled that through the window, actually, to get it in there. So here is the construction start. I put in a spiral staircase.
And didn't you say it was just a trap door to get in there originally?
Yeah, so the trap door was in this room. It's a 2-foot by 2-foot attic access, and I do have a picture of my daughter up there on a ladder, but it was time capsule because when they did the bathroom, they couldn't use the top, so it was really cool up there, and it's like I gotta have this as my office, so that's.
And that's
so
that staircase
there's the
right there.
staircase.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you find anything up there in the attic?
So we did find a paper that, newspaper's time capsule, and I think it was the late 1800s. Unfortunately, it got lost, and it was pretty well crippled up, but, yeah, we found a couple pieces like that.
No gold.
No gold, no mercury dimes, nothing. So, here's the original door, or the tower, and then there's the hole that I cut. And then I built a room off the back to access the office. And there's the sitting part of the office, and you may have another picture of the office.
I don't know if I've got quite another one, but you can see where the staircase comes up through there.
Yeah. And I think you guys use it now as a...
Yeah, a little man cave. The dogs can't get up there, so I can escape. And
So I put, okay, so this is the original Widow's Walk, whatever, but that was an earlier picture. That's in good shape. A storm came by and pretty much smashed it all. So I have a couple little pieces. I've given you some. Maybe the museum has some too. I found something similar and I put it up there to give the illusion. But that's the original.
just a neat
So
little
that's
picture.
Marilyn living good there,
Mhm.
and her kids, and this is the kitchen. And the windows were too low for cabinets, so when I opened them up, I put all new pillow windows in. I raised by stone. I managed to get some extra stone and raise it so it's above cabinet level. So those are little smaller windows.
One of the neat things that surprises people is how nice the basement is. Because you expect, old house creepy, but you must have tuck pointed the whole,
Oh, there's a ton of work in there.
yeah.
So here you have the new floor joists, and of course you had to get all this plumbing and everything out before you can get the floor joists in. So this is all new from I bought the house in '97, and it took me really 7 years. The first 2 or 3 years were really kind of rough. I was painting apartments in Lawrence and take a shower where we're there before I come home, and to flush a toilet you have rainwater because the septic did work. And I got electric up pretty quick, so I had.
And that was on well at that time, right?
Yeah, and it was on well until about 2013, 2014, somewhere around.
Yeah. Staircase.
So the staircase, they didn't have codes back then, it was very steep. And so I tore it out and rebuilt it the best I could to get a 7-9 rise.
And it's still plenty steep.
It's still not quite the code, but we did the best we could.
Yeah.
So rebuilt the whole thing, and then that's all new oak. And then that's a marble foyer in the front.
This is real interesting on, let me just jump to what it looks like now with that, back to, there wasn't much to salvage there. You
So
had
it
to
had really neat woodwork, but the termites had just gotten through it, so I wasn't able to save it. So it did, I think this was the original. I think this all is original. I don't know. Maybe I'm starting to reframe it. Well, we were able to save some of the roof, I think.
It's in the same look.
Oh, yeah.
Same footprint.
As much as I could, I've saved all the things. Even down to the door handles, for instance. If you've ever been to the Arabia in Kansas City and you see where it's time capsule stuff and they're cleaning all the handles and stuff like that, it's the same era. So those brown handles are being cleaned at the Arabia, so you can see the same pieces there. So the entire house, like I said, is chiseled stone, limestone, and I left so I basically built a house inside of a house. I have a 2x4 and then insulation. Stone doesn't have much of insulation, but I wanted to showcase what was behind that. So in the music room, I created, and I put soft lights
On there to really highlight it. It's
So here's
neat,
a-
because,
Yeah, example, the doors had pearls and stuff, and there's the door handles. I probably would have done this a little differently now. I would probably stain that a little differently, but, and then I put 1x6, or maybe 1x8, but whatever the old casing baseboard height was, I tried to replicate it. And that's new 3/4 oak.
yeah.
flooring.
What is amazing on that stonework is you think, A, there was no heavy machinery to move that. 2, that's all hand chiseled, and that's one of the neat things. I'm glad Robert exposed it, because you're looking at a lot of work for every one of those blocks coming through there, and it's neat to see it as opposed to just hidden behind sheetrock. And there it is, another closer look of that cool effect. I've got 3, thankfully Robert was able to capture a lot of pictures of the remodeling and some older ones that Amy Livingood, I think, provided to you.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I
in
became
the-
very close to the family, and we got a lot of pictures before and after.
So I've got these binders, if you want to take a look, there was tons of photos that were great on there. Jumping in a little bit more into the property itself, obviously we got the Brender House there, what they call the carriage house shop through there, which also had a lot of work done to that.
Right.
And then the Rosenau granary that is still there and doing that. And then there was a large barn right here that blew over, I think, in the 60s there. And they kind of buried it, and you'd never know until you start digging there, the rock work on that. But very, very big barn there. One of the challenges of the property is this kind of, you get the metal detector and you go out there. Well, as a former blacksmith, there's not an inch of that ground that doesn't have metal in it. It's beep, 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 beep everywhere. And sometimes you might as well just put it away and just start digging, because you'll never know what you'll find from there. And we have found some neat things, like, I don't know if any of you are familiar with like a frozen Charlotte doll. They were dolls taught to, used to little kids to teach about not going out in when it's cold. It's a little, to represent a frozen kid. Things were harsh back then on toys, let me tell you. We found one of those, old marbles we were able to date, just kind of normal family stuff that you would see out there. And someday a lot of golf balls out there as well.
Well, that was from like 2001.
Yeah.
And the tee box was right here.
Not to there. But we have put in a pond out there now that if we would just get some rain, we can eventually get that thing filled up. But that's fun. And that's the granary right there. Still old and strong and doing good. In the shop itself, there's some interesting old pictures of how that was. And then it was gutted as well and sheetrocked, and it very nice HVAC system. And
Well, I was in construction, so I needed that, so I added the furnace and sheetrocked it.
it's nice. Good place and shop to do. And then the world's largest picnic table is built right there. What were you doing with that?
So I said, hey guys, we need to build a picnic table, but we got the dimension wrong. We started with the A-frame wrong, and once you start, you just keep going. And it takes 4 people to move.
Yeah.
But you can sit 12 comfortably.
It was a monster.
It went with the house, I don't know.
And then another picture of that nice metal roof and all that. So good place for projects. Like I mentioned, here's one example, the old apple farm and things through there. On the back of the property that were there, wish they still were, and we'll have to plant some apple trees to keep that going. One of the things kind of jumped in is, okay, future. And one of the things we've been most pleased with is the Giving Garden that's right next door. And the great work that's been doing on that, and the many volunteers. And honestly, at this point, Stephanie and I just try to help where we can and stay out of the way. But amazing stuff they're doing, and how much it's going. And Amy there is really the architect of everything that's going on there, which is quite active year round. And we just had a meeting about it, but evolving and really shows again, it's not a piece of property you put on a shelf and ignore. It is a living thing that is doing things, and we're real excited about what's been done and the hard work that goes into there, and where that's continuing to build, and the excitement from there. I will also do a pitch. We can always use volunteers out there. Anybody is interested in learning more about what's going on there, reach out to myself or Amy, and we get there. We can always use more help out there, and the important things that they're doing there. I'm going to talk a minute about the future, but Eudora's growing. Eudora, we're going to have lots of houses all over at some point. It's natural. It's part of the whole growth. I'm just excited that the work that Ben and the Historical Society are doing to protect that piece, because once it's gone, it's gone. If that house had been gone, all it would have been is memories, maybe some photos. It's still here. The Pillow House is still here. These sorts of things. It's so critical that they get protected in the long-term investment, like what Robert did. A lot of blood and sweat and tears to keep that going there. So that's what it is. I'm just excited about future happens, whether we want it or not. What can we do to help preserve and then adapt to it, like the Giving Garden? That's something that the community needs. Back in the day, gardening and showing kids vegetables and all that would have seemed very odd. These days, it's super important, and a lot of the work that goes in there is educational, about explaining where the food you get at the grocery store or the restaurant comes from, and that's one of the great things about it. So one of the key things I want to talk about is an area where there's a lot of myth and bad information about, and that's the getting it on the registry. A lot of folks feel that when you do that, all of a sudden you're giving up ownership or rights or all that. Quite the contrary. What I talked about of that history, the whole purpose of the historical registry is to protect homes for the future, but to do it in a way that is workable. When you get it on there. There's no restrictions placed on it. It's your home, you get to do. You don't give up any of your rights to the place. What you do is you start getting registered in history and protecting that. But two, what I'll talk about is the benefits. One of the great benefits is these tax credits. To get the property listed, it seems daunting, and there are people that will help and people you can pay to do. I did it myself with their help and getting some support. I did not need to go pay to do that. They're serious about it. You can't just wing it, and you're gonna do drafts and all the rest of it, but it's doable, and they're there to help you get it on there. But this is one of the key things. When you do get it on there, people, you start, doing anything, and they're gonna block it, and you're prohibited. No. What you do is they want the house to be preserved, and that means things like HVAC, windows, painting. It's not just you got to turn it all historical. They know if a house isn't livable, it's going to go away and it's going to get bulldozed. They're there to help preserve it. So what you do is you try to at least a couple months beforehand. You give them a list of all the things you want to do to the house in a given period of time. They take it, they review the materials you give, why you're doing it. The guidelines, they are broad. They are not there to nitpick and do. They just want the house preserved. If it gets approved, like the work that we're getting done currently, that's great. All there, you don't have to do multiple bids, you don't have to do that. And with that, once the work's completed, I submit the invoices, and then depending on the population, so we're in that category, not spending $100,000, but as you can get, 40% of that comes back as a tax credit. And you go, great, what do I do with a tax credit? I'm like, there's people that will buy these tax credits. So you can sell that right there or keep it and go against your state taxes through there. The work we're doing right now is, like any house, you need the maintenance. So we're getting a lot of woodwork done on the outside replaced, and then the whole house painted and sealed and all the rest of it. Standard maintenance work, all approved for that tax credit. And it is a really great program. Anybody that has a house or you know somebody that's through there, can't encourage you enough to do the research, talk to Ben, and do that. And it's really neat. What, 13 homes?
10.
10. Hopefully more, because it is a great program. And again, all the gotchas you hear about aren't there. They, in no way, I can sell the house. No, Stephanie, hypothetically, but there's no restrictions on anything through there. So happy to talk about that afterwards, but it is a key element of that. A few more pictures of the house in winter time.
Remember snow?
Yeah, it's coming. It's just such a look coming down that street through there and seeing it. Some artwork that was done for that. And of course, we are getting to that time, and it's almost time for Santa to come out as well through there for those folks that got to see him last year. So thank you. Happy to answer any questions. And more importantly, if you've got more information that we don't know about, happy to capture that information. So thank you. Any questions? Anybody have any memories? The apple orchard, did anybody go to the apple orchard back in the day? Did you?
I can remember going out there. I was pretty small, but I remember
Yeah.
going out there with my mom, and I would come out there and fill up the bushel basket of apples.
Oh, that's great. That is cool. And I guess they grew Christmas trees out there as well back in the day. Of course, we call it a side hustle these days. You do anything you can to generate some additional revenue.
So it was Marilyn's daughters who did the Christmas trees,
Mhm.
and it was on your property.
Okay, the apple orchard was behind on the
Yeah,
right.
the apple orchard was near, closer to the lake, where the little
On
pond.
back then.
Yeah, there were trees there when I first got there, and I was using them, giving them to family, and they were getting pretty big.
Yeah. It is, properties adapt, things that, the pond back there, you can go look at old aerial photos. It's amazing what they can do on the old aerial photos that are now available, dating back even to the 20s. Now they're not high depth, but you can see where ponds moved, where you think, well, this is a 200-year-old forest. No, that was farmland not that long ago. And things shift and trees grow and life goes on. So like I said, we put a pond out there, just nice thing. We got fish in there, and hopefully we get more rain and it keeps filling in, and it's just a nice thing to look at. And of course, the giving garden over there and all the great things that was a soybean field, and now all the things that are going out there as well. So, and fun things, they get all kinds of school kids out there now learning about agriculture and growing and stuff, and that's really exciting.
Became friends with Harlan and Marilyn Livingood
Yeah.
that lived there. I'm trying to think just what era they lived. And at that time, they took me into the back part of the house, and, but that was before it was all restored.
Right. Do you remember a cistern back there or anything like that? Because there was one back in the back corner, I think.
So
you know.
there's a cistern that was fed from the gutter in the back,
Hmm.
and then there's a well back there.
Yeah.
too.
But yeah, and the cistern was in
She
the,
loved flowers, that whole place was,
yeah.
lots of flowers around that house.
And the peonies are still going strong. I don't know how many decades they've been. And there's a Japanese, Stephanie should be here. She knows plants, but an old tree that flowers every year as well. That's is
It's
doing
a
well.
pear tree, or,
No,
I know what you're talking about, it's on the
east side of the house.
Jerry Bosch.
Yeah, she'll correct me later and kick me for forgetting it, but it's very pretty. As long as we don't get an early freeze, then it kills the buds, so. But yeah, the flowers, and there's old articles referencing the garden club that used to be in Eudora, and she was a member and all that, so. Kind of nice to see kind of come full circle, because the master gardeners are growing lots of neat flowers out there as well, so. Anything else? Well, if anybody's interested, we've got these binders here with lots of cool photos and some different things on that. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the Brender home and the wonderful things that are there. And like I said, I won't be here, but it'll be neat in 100 years for other people to be talking about this as well.
You might explain your hay bale. It doesn't look like a hay bale.
No.
And you do not paint hay bale with a little bit of paint.
No, I'm glad you recognize that. About half of it in my lungs, but yeah.
Is that about a ½ inch thick?
Yeah, it is. That thing's pretty solid. It's been painted, I think, 6 times now on different things.
I moved that around some
Yeah.
with my tractor, and it was heavy.
Yeah, when a gentleman I know, farmer Stephanie always wanted a hay bale, to decorate and all that. He brought it over, and I was like, well, maybe we can move it. And he says, when it comes off the truck, that's where it's at. So figure out where you want it, and that's moved an inch through there, and it's getting a little tougher on painting it, because once you get some colors, it's taking even more paint to get it there. But he keeps offering to bring over a second one. I was like, no, one's enough. So. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, that concludes our meeting. I think Nolan's getting some pictures ready if you guys would like to stick around to look at those, and we look forward to seeing you guys in January for our next meeting. Thank you guys.
Thank you for doing this.